I agree with Vladimir Putin and Alexei Navalny that the idea of nuclear or hypersonic missiles ever be put in the Ukraine is an idea that must be arrested. I propose that Congress and Biden convene to sign a treaty that states that nuclear and hypersonic missiles shall never be installed in the Ukraine. Now, you've probably heard of the inverted pyramid in journalism. It's put the most important thing first and then work your way down because people's attention spans might wander. I'm not worried about people's attention spans wandering any further. If you want the central point of this broadcast video, you've seen it. If you're interested in more substance, I'm not going to go into it through the inverted pyramid. I'm just going to provide a narrative of my views. There are probably people saying to themselves who know about me, who are paid to monitor me, who are paid to be scolds about me, and who are harboring old footage and souvenirs from what happened to me. The Jimmy Crew is just trying to impress a bunch of little girls. I'll have you know that when I do see the Russian figure skating team, I also see in my mind's eye very clearly old films of young Russian women impoverished in wartime losing it for what they were facing in World War II. And I know and have suffered my entire political career as an editorialist from that America refuses to graciously acknowledge our debt to Russia for their service in our interest in World War II. As a very young child, with my distinguished father, we had fun going through his stamp collection, which he gave me. What I remember most about my stamp collection has haunted me and will haunt me for as long as I have memory. They were Hitler stamps over stamped Ukraine. I can never shake that. Now, people will, of course, pounce on me. I'm likely to be heard by people who have been through firefights, mature women and men, who see me as sheltered, and by Black people who haven't been through firefights or have, who see their own oppression as something that's lost on a sheltered, privileged white boy. I may or may not argue some of that. But they will say, in all likelihood, that I've proved my loyalties are to Russia, not to the United States. I want to make something very clear. I may not have opened this broadcast with Fridays for Future and the climate change movement, but I know where the true leadership of this planet is right now. It's the government of Bangladesh. No one is more honest, sincere, devoted, concerned, and absolutely driven to rescue the planet and the planet's people. All attention should be on the government of Bangladesh, and all attention being on the government of Bangladesh will be richly and handsomely rewarded, not with souvenirs, but with wisdom, with the power of knowledge, knowing what we need to change to choose our course in freedom wisely. People say Russia is an oppressed country. I don't see it that way. There are incidents of oppression there, and there are incidents of oppression here. But even under the Soviet Union, There were brilliant, thriving intellectuals like Mikhail Bakhtin, who've been wrongly prejudiced because of the era of the times they survived. It's wrong to prejudice Russia. One of the things I've learned in the study of history of the Russian people and the history of the Soviet Union is to use the index. Because when you come at it through the superpower mindset, you don't really get anywhere. They are a rich world of cultural genius. Now, there are people who will say, we know where this is leading with him. He wants to see the good in everything, but he refuses to forgive transgressions against us that we claim never happened. Go out there and save the world for us, Jimmy Creary. Ha 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 ha. With that, I think I'll surprise you just a little. What I know about the communist situation is that they have no safe exit for leaders that they feel have been corrupted. The leaders cannot go to the Brookings Institute and excuse themselves into academic affairs. It's like jumping off of a bridge. To allow yourself to be displaced is a firing squad, and it makes them brutal. This is wrong, and we should be helping them learn how to transfer power. Instead of this, we're setting an example. We're taking safe passage away from our own congressman. The transfer of power was brutally attacked in the January 6th insurrection. And this very active form of mayhem. And people who are looking for control. Putin is terribly wrong to put his loyalties behind Trump. Because if anybody would put hypersonic missiles and nuclear weapons into the Ukraine as a laugh, as an act of contempt, it is this faction of American affairs that we need to get straightened out. I have avoided some of the things in politics because my heart has been broken. One of the things that I know about has been used to break my heart is the fact that I see things on the local level. And for this, I have another thing to thank Russia for, because they provide very wholesome and thorough representation of JFK's life and career. They're not afraid. They're not ideological. They're careful to show where there were discrepancies in his personal conduct as well as laudable, admirable policy goals in his administration. And all of this is very, very important. Like all of you who are in mind when the government speaks, which is the people on the streets and in the homes and raising families and children in public schools and working in grocery stores, the unsung heroes in America, who greatly resemble the unsung heroes in Russia. Is we want you to take it seriously and think about it. And I see this as homegirl control. Which brings me to the point I'm making. It may seem like I lost the thread. I didn't. These people, these women, the people on the streets have a legitimate interest in me, in my social contact, in my personal affairs, in my explanations and aspirations, and of course, in my health and my injuries. Some of these people made me ill. And one of the ways that they go about it is playing like they take seriously the idea of premarital sex. It's important to know when somebody's just play acting, when a whole culture is just play acting about taking that seriously, more seriously than they do. That's why I prefer Russian intelligence about JFK's extramarital affairs and rumors of JFK's extramarital affairs, because it's on the level. It's not heartbreakingly and depressingly exploitative. It's not Michael Moore and Mignolet Wen chasing Jimmy Creary around because he's traumatized by a neurological injury and lying about it. So when I say I'm compromised, it's important to understand that when they say, let's go out and make Jimmy Creary cater to his own humiliators, my answer to that is, I'm just a poor old man. I'm entitled to take these things as seriously as anyone else. So I'm reading over my notes here. I'll show them to you. And they're constructed so that I can use them for as much time as it takes to go through them. They mocked me as a dictator because they said I was sexually occupied and practicing oppression of my girlfriends. And they left me no safe exit. Dictator, they called it, and had me jumping off a bridge into homelessness to get away from them, where they pursued me. We see in the valorous performance of Valieva traces of Donald Trump's revolution. The profundity of real pain and real tears from people who are expert at getting performances. Oliver Stone is a friend of Pew. A speechwriter who was ripping off the Carnegie Museum, it seems, perhaps, is the theory that should be investigated. Adam Eisenstadt used to say when the Challenger flew into the face of God, they blew him up real good, They blew him up real good, They blew him up real good, The warped misuse of our crying shame and what's happening in the world and the promise being denied our children has turned into a theory of human coping. I don't want to pigeonhole Valieva's astounding performance by saying that that's the end of the matter. I don't think it is. I think there was enough ambiguity in what she said to make it a great performance and a wonderful contribution to our civics and our dialogue. There's more going on in our politics that suggests what Yevgeny Yevtushenko called the face behind the face. I noticed it in Alondra Nelson's very apt conclusion about binaries, this versus that they obscured, and she was describing the difference between race as a centrality and womanhood as a centrality. Binaries don't serve us there. And she introduced the idea of intersectionalities, which I think is fair and wise and good. We need to recognize the intersectionalities of identity politics. I think that's wisdom. What I don't think is wisdom is overlooking the black power behind the crippling and terrible juggernauts of wrongfulness that are going on around us that we must debate and mitigate somehow in order to survive. Now, some people, which awed me, our very survival is at stake in the loud noises being made by Putin over the Ukraine. I grew up with these kinds of drills. When I was little, they had us under desks. What he's doing is reasonable and fair if he feels that the United States has forgotten the horrible drama of World War II. Nobody wants it repeated. I don't see it when people say he's plotting to conquer the Ukraine. I don't believe it. He's concerned to keep Russia safe, as we all should be. It's ridiculous. And he has seen spontaneous acts of crushing unfair, uncalled for strategic ideas over countries like Iraq. Now, I'm not trying to excuse everything Russia has done, but I do recognize the point. We could use their help when he refers to partnership. And he could use our help in trying to assess what kind of accommodations we feel more comfortable with. I certainly would love to see Alexei Navalny at large doing his thing. I think he's an exciting person. And I don't think he means Vladimir Putin physical harm. But as a word to the wise, my sister berated me. She says some of these men in power, Trump included, will kill people who disagree with them. Nobody wants it to come to that. The things that have been done to him and to me by renegade outfits are inexcusable. The very idea of putting a nerve agent in a child the way they did to me. But when I say we could use their help, I think it's an understanding what happened. One of the things that happened is that there is a very sophisticated scientific general consortium of eugenicists and strategic analysts of the human psychological condition who are more than just play acting for a laugh. Homegirl, super importance of their boyfriend never cheating. They're honing in on a parochial war machine that takes away at all any idea of caprice in our personal affairs. And behind some of this is the power of a black lobby that has yet to be addressed or carefully explained by the NAACP or the Rainbow Coalition. Bobby Kennedy is visibly seen in archives produced by the Russian government as being stalked in the name of sexual affairs by an unidentified black man who seems to be indicating that he's willing to execute Robert Kennedy. The reason I say that is because there's semiotics of that sort surrounding Martin Luther King and Jet magazine for his marital infidelities. And because the whole index of marital infidelities surrounds JFK's assassination in Dealey Plaza and the way they used me to justify the AIDS attack. So when we talk about genocidal warfare and ecocide, we're also talking about the end of our legitimacy as a species towards one another. We have to come to grips with this. The only way we're going to come to grips with this is showing our appreciation of one another when we're not dealing with that, when people are concerned. We need to do everything we can for our vital workers, for the homegirls who've woken up, and for God's sakes have stopped play acting, admitting that we're all human beings with faults. That is one of the reasons why I believe Camilla's tears were very, very real. A lot of corruption charges go on, and their sincerity is mixed. It's opportunistic sometimes. It perhaps was a corruption charge that brought the black woman, Isola Curry, to Martin Luther King's autograph table to stab him. But behind this opportunism about corruption, there's also the weird militias. The weird militias come from groups like HAIR, allied to MK Ultra, and more sophisticated new groups like UW dialectical militias, who hear me say, thanks to Kamala Valieva, I can stand on one foot, and answer, wait till we cut off one of her legs. They murdered Circe Kennedy. I think America owes it to everyone to get to the bottom of these weird militias who have stalked me because they see me as worshiping Satan because of pornography. When I was little and a little bit strange, I saw atomic explosions as devil worship. I think we need to get down to business and understanding and appreciating one another and get off the opportunistic corruption charge trip that we're on. One of the things I see in these ice skaters is police talent, the ability to arrive, assess, and address and stop things from becoming worse than they are. I sincerely believe Vladimir Putin is doing his level best to stop and address what's happening, see them not become worse than they already are. I will pipe down if he invades Ukraine. That's uncalled for. What we need is action and addressing the legitimacy of his concern. And we need to help him arrive at a way to come to a safe exit if people decide he's not doing a good job, because that's the nature of power. Nobody has it forever, just as nobody has life forever. Inevitably, North Korea comes up in political affairs regarding the United States because they're different from us. I hope that we reach a point in our society where we can look with some amusement at the difference between their rock and roll and Pink Floyd. Their rock and roll says, let's study to make ourselves on our own a better nation. And Pink Floyd says, we don't need no education, we don't need no thought control. Surely there's a happy medium between those two extremes. How about this? Let's study to make ourselves a better nation by trying to figure out why we become so scornful of education that we don't want it anymore. Is it our hostility towards people who there's reasonable arguments we should never have gone to war against? Even MacArthur scratched his head about it. So when we talk about Putin, I know we're talking to some extent about Trump, Schwarzenegger, Oliver Stone, and Hollywood. But to me, we're also talking about Mikhail Bakhtin, about the real hunger for peace of people who live in and around the Ukraine. They see me as having a sort of mystical bent in things. And Ming No Wen says, anything that they got on me, they can and will be using in the court of public opinion. And they've really worked me over. Greg Carl, Joe Biden, and Aaron Dixon have quite a thing going with the play acting about the valor of sexual freedom, refusing to volunteer as a suicide mission in the AIDS community. They have quite a thing going there. And it's covering for what happened to King and Kennedy, among other things. We could use everybody's help with that. You do have to give and take in our world. There's good and bad. I don't mean to be dismissive of how serious things are, but rigging and escalation dominance, which is a word for hypersonic blah blah blah, to a 12-year-old's purposeful seduction of a 13-year-old in Pittsburgh's court of public opinion is ridiculous. If you're going to use it, use it. But let me tell you something. Even if you give people a good idea, like it would be a real good idea for people to use their cars less. It would be a real good idea for Congress to make a vow that we'll never put nuclear hypersonic missiles into the Ukraine. These are good ideas. There are people who will say that you get a good idea about, uh, you know, retraining for cement demolitions or a Zoom meetup in international affairs to teach people the basics of climate change so they can teach it in schools so children can get used to it. And people will whack the table and say no because it came from Cuervo. He can't fulfill all that himself. He's not good enough to do it, and he wants us to do it for him. Well, what's wrong with a good idea? Jeannie is deaf. She's Korean. She has Down syndrome. There was nobody to tell her don't teach queer ball sign night, which she did it on her own. And I ended up in Phi Theta Kappa. I mean, it's an honor. I have it right up here on my wall. You want to see it? I graduated from college. That's nice. I'm not threatening anybody. The reason I believe her is because she made me cry like hell. So did Greta. Now, when I look at the ecocide, genocide, nexus, or whatever that book is that came out that's so necessary, it is necessary. I see Martin Crook as part of an index. Martin Sheen was in Pittsburgh with Irene, crooking my Ukraine stamps, crooking with Schulman from the museums and stuff. We got to be real careful. They're putting us to the wall with climate change, telling us we got to accept all this. Our granny's being removed because of overpopulation. There are answers to overpopulation. Don't you understand? When people are educated, they look for other ways to do things. People have more children when they're poor as a form of insurance because of the death rate of poor children. I mean, the understanding of poverty has made tons of progress on it. Talk to the people of Bangladesh. They are civilized, beautiful, intelligent, caring, mainstream leaders. They know what they're dealing with. So, what I'm saying is, you may be within reason saying that you should have stronger values, especially if you're an example. That JFK was not Confucian enough. He should have led by example in his marital affairs and so on. You may have some point in saying that in military affairs, everybody's slipping things to one another. There's notes of secret strategies and stuff. But it's important to remember that not everybody does that. Not every reason for it is illegitimate, and that it's not fair, and it's not an objective, and that it's not good policy in a world at peace. What we need to do is to man up to maturity and responsibility. If you want to have stronger values, one of the strongest values of all is appreciation. It's time that we appreciate the frightening situation that we're putting Russia in by a rapid escalation of the powers that surround them while attacking in a totally wanton fashion other societies in a way that affect the whole world by burning oil fields, for example. We have to question our internal legitimacy when we try to take out Congress through an insurrection to deny them safe passage when they're even elected. I think it's important to understand that when it comes to the Ukraine, I don't believe there's a world of difference between the position of anybody in Russia. They care about themselves. It's time we care about them too. That's all I'm saying. So lay off me about it, because that's where I think we should do something legitimate. It's not just saying we're going to concede some concessions to Putin the bully.